Happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch Case Cracked. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. On Case Cracked, we look into a mystery and what are the critical pieces that help solve that mystery. This is one that takes many, many years, and one critical piece is really what helps break the case. This is one that we like to call bitter cherries. It's March 16th, 1982 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Carolyn Tuzignant's day was not going as planned. After sending her 13-year-old daughter, Carrie Ann Jopick, to school, she went about her day running errands and taking care of the home she lived in with her husband, Carrie Ann's stepfather, Frederick. However, the day took a turn when Carrie Ann's middle school called at about 1:30 p.m. to inform her that her daughter was being sent home. She had been caught walking the halls without a pass, and the principal wanted Carolyn to come pick her up. Carolyn, however, was very upset at Carrie Ann for being suspended and insisted that the girl walk the block home herself. She's 13 and a half years old, she told the school. She doesn't need her mom to take her by the hand and take her home. It was a decision Carolyn would come to regret. As the day wore on, Carolyn continued to watch out her windows, but Carrie Ann never came home. When the afternoon passed into night and she had not seen her daughter, the worried mother decided it was time to call the police. She filled them in on Carrie Ann's suspension and gave them a description of what she had been wearing that day. She was 5 foot 3 inches tall and weighed 96 pounds. For her day at school, she had worn a white cloth jacket with a white shirt, brown corduroy jeans, and a pair of white tennis shoes that she had borrowed from her best friend, Robin Mant. Carolyn let police know that Carrie Ann was an independent child, but she always let her mother know where she was going and when she would be home. The next morning, after officers had gathered their resources, they began to question her friends at school and in the neighborhood. The friends revealed that after leaving school, she walked to Robin Mant's house, across the street from her own, to attend a small party. Unfortunately, no one could remember seeing her leave at its conclusion that afternoon. They insisted there were no fights. The party had just been a small get-together between friends where they drank what little alcohol they had scavenged and smoked some marijuana. Although they said Carrie Ann had partaken in both, she was not drunk or out of sorts at any point. After the house and surrounding neighborhoods were investigated, family and police decided that Carrie Ann must have run away from home and started a missing persons investigation to find her. Searches were held, pleas were made to the public, and flyers were handed out, hoping to find some clue as to her whereabouts. Some leads were called in, but nothing ever panned out. Of the people at the party, only one person stuck out to investigators: 17-year-old Jose Ferreira. Jose lived on the same block that Carrie Ann and the Mants lived on, and he had attended the party. In the years following her disappearance, news began to reach investigators that Jose had acted very odd since that day. Tammy Zingler-Schmidt, Carrie Ann's cousin, said that in the weeks and months that followed, Jose had befriended the Tuzignant family. At times, he would sit with them in their kitchen, offering comfort, while quietly hinting that he knew more about the night Carrie Ann disappeared. He insisted that if he revealed what he knew, he would be killed for spilling the beans. So he continued to keep quiet. The family was never able to get any more information from Jose and started to believe that the quiet boy was exaggerating to gain some type of attention. When questioned by police, he said he knew nothing of Carrie Ann's disappearance. Carolyn, however, had started to have her doubts as to whether or not her daughter had run away. She knew Carrie Ann was headstrong and stubborn, but had been happy and had never expressed any desire to leave. She started to consider darker possibilities. She would say, "I waited and waited for Carrie, but she never came home. I knew right off the bat that she had not run away. It took about 3 months before I realized that she may be dead and lying in a ditch somewhere without someone there to take care of her." These thoughts haunted the mother night and day. On September 2nd, 1983, 17 months after she went missing, the Mants hired a carpenter to remodel their back porch. Shortly after work began, the contractor yelled that someone needed to call the police. They had found human remains in a shallow grave under the porch. Investigators knew the remains must be that of Carrie Ann, and when Carolyn was called to identify the clothes and items found with her, she knew instantly that it was her daughter. She was still wearing the clothes she wore the day she disappeared. 4 days later, dental records confirmed the remains were, in fact, that of Carrie Ann Jopek. An autopsy would show that she had died as a result of bleeding inside her skull from head and neck injuries. With renewed vigor, investigators again questioned everyone involved with the case. While no one had anything new to add, they had noticed a few strange things. One neighbor claimed that the day Carrie Ann's body was found, Jose Ferreira walked into the man's backyard and stood beside the now empty shallow grave for quite some time before leaving. A few days after that, another neighbor contacted police to say that he saw Ferreira behaving strangely and crying in public. No other leads ever came forward, but Ferreira was always somewhere nearby, trying to offer help to the family, stating that he was haunted by Carrie Ann, although he would never fully explain why. Police questioned Ferreira at the time, but he again denied any involvement in Carrie Ann's disappearance or death. For 33 years, her case saw no new leads. So, on October 11th, 2015, when Ferreira's wife walked into a Milwaukee police station with a confession, investigators were understandably caught off guard. She claimed that earlier that day, her husband had admitted to her that he had killed Carrie Ann, and he didn't stop there. He also called a crisis hotline and confessed to them, as well as calling a reporter at WISN 12 News in Milwaukee, telling a story similar to the one he had told the crisis counselor and his wife. When police finally caught up with Ferreira on the 13th, he made a full confession. He claimed that the afternoon of the murder, he attended the party at the Mantz house. He said he offered Carrie Ann some marijuana, which she tried but didn't like. Ferreira told investigators that he wanted to make out with Carrie Ann and talked her into going down into the basement. At the top of the stairs, she turned to him and told him she was having second thoughts. "I don't know if this is a good idea," she said, before Ferreira sternly told her, "You are going downstairs." He then pushed the 13-year-old who fell, hitting her head and body on the railing as she tumbled down into the basement. He went downstairs with the worst of intentions, but then realized that the fall had in fact killed her. In a panic, he carried her body to an exterior cellar door, which gave him easy access to the space under the rear porch. There, in less than an hour, he dug a shallow grave and buried Carrie Ann. Jose Ferreira was soon charged with second-degree murder. Unfortunately, he left prosecutors in a tough spot. Part of the reason Ferreira made his confession was due to alcoholism and an impending divorce. His team believed that he had only confessed to try to gain attention and convince his wife to stay with him. When this didn't work, his defense team started offering up other potential suspects to sway the jurors. By 2016, his defense team claimed that someone else at the party may have killed Carrie Ann. One man was set to testify that his girlfriend, who was Carrie Ann's best friend Robin, had told him her older brother, John Mant, was responsible. Although John declined to answer questions on the advice of his attorney, his sister claimed she never told anyone her brother had committed the murder. She said her ex-boyfriend's claim was simply a bid to get out of prison on unrelated charges he was facing. Prosecutors now knew they needed to get a conviction before they lost their chance, and the only sure way to do that was to offer a plea deal. In the deal, Ferreira would plead guilty to the amended charges of attempted second-degree sexual assault with use of force and false imprisonment. This would give him a prison sentence of just 7 years. Claiming that he just wanted to get any proceedings over quickly, on January 17th of 2017, Jose Ferreira was found guilty and sentenced. In court, he claimed that guilt over the murder was only one of the driving factors in his confession. Before the proceedings were concluded, he apologized directly to Carrie Ann's family, saying, I can't take back how it happened. Sorry, from the deepest pain in my heart. Sorry. Carrie Ann's parents told reporters that they understood the problems facing the prosecution in such an old case and were satisfied with the court's decision. They agreed that it was better to offer the plea deal rather than take the gamble that he would be convicted. Carolyn no longer blames herself for her daughter's disappearance and death. She knows that the headstrong child would have found a way to sneak out to the party even if she had picked her up from school that day. She now comforts herself with happy memories, such as the cherry tree Carrie Ann climbed every year. Even though the cherries were always bitter, her daughter refused to give up. She now credits Carrie Ann herself with solving the case. In one conversation with Ferreira, she said he told her he couldn't escape her daughter. He said he was haunted, she said. He told me, "Your daughter's haunting me." And I believe she was. Case cracked. We would like to thank the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, CBS News, the Huffington Post, the Statesman, Ranker.com, and Newspapers.com for original articles on this case. Of course, the biggest thank you goes to Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's case. Got to tell you guys, I don't know how I feel about the sentencing on this one. 7 years just seems like so little for doing something like this, but the family, I think, makes a great point. Sometimes you have to make that decision. We talked about this on a case recently here on the channel. Sometimes the decision to have the truth, even if that comes with a lesser penalty for the person responsible, is a better decision for the family. And that's kind of what we see have in this case. But I'm telling you, 7 years just doesn't seem quite like enough. There's also just a few things I wanted to throw out there. We've got some conflicting reports, even as to why Carrie Ann was originally suspended. Some articles are saying that there was a fight. Actually, that seems to be kind of more in the social media space. Most credible articles that we found said that it was that she was essentially ditching class or, walking around the halls with no pass. So that's what we told you in today's story. There was also one evidence problem that cropped up, and that's when the current medical examiner, after reviewing the 1983 autopsy, concluded a neck injury to Carrie Ann was more likely the result of being struck from behind with a heavy object than from falling downstairs. So that brought some of the confession that Jose gave into doubt. Quite honestly, I don't think that rules out his confession necessarily. I could see him maybe not admitting to doing that, and it's possible that he did. Maybe he struck her at the top of the stairs with something to the back of her head, and then she went tumbling down the stairs. I think that's a possibility. I don't think that changes the guilt in this case at all. And then, of course, you've got that other wrinkle in the case where, hey, someone else says that it was the brother that was living in the house. The only thing that kind of sticks me about that, of course, is, he didn't want to be interviewed about it, which I know there's some people that think it would be very smart to make that same decision. But the whole thing about burying a body in someone else's backyard and somehow pulling that off during a party, the logistics of that seem a little tricky. Of course, we showed a picture of you or a picture of the area, and you can see that getting from the storm cellar doors to the porch is extremely easy. You wouldn't be out there for a matter of seconds between trying to move her body from the doors to under the porch. But didn't anyone notice that this guy was missing during all this? And, I don't know, what's a 17-year-old doing partying with 13-year-olds? I'm sure a bunch of you out there right now are shaking your head saying, John, it happens all the time. I'm sure it absolutely does. I know a bunch of you out there are probably saying, hey, John, this is just like that case on Unsolved Mysteries. So I'll just put it out there. Yes, I did see it. And yes, I see the similarities you're talking about. In that case, there are several bodies that are found under a porch, and the father of the family is missing. I know some of you are asking what I think of the new Unsolved Mysteries. I'm really happy that they're covering cases that you probably haven't heard of before. I know my audience in particular appreciates that, so I'm really happy to see them go that way about it. I do have to say I'm really missing a very certain voice narrating that show. And I know there's nothing they can do about that. But other than that, I think it's a great show, and I hope all of you out there are enjoying it as well. A big thank you to PayPal supporters Jennifer Dixon and Angela Welch Sola. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit www.lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for PayPal, sign up for Patreon, or buy merchandise. All of it helps keep me here with limited commercials. You'll notice we never let YouTube inject ads in the middle of these presentations, and sometimes we have to go completely without ads to be able to freely and properly discuss these cases. Help me continue to help others by directly supporting the channel over at www.lordandarts.com today. And if you can't contribute that way, please help by sharing these stories. Together, we'll continue learning about justice, how to keep ourselves and our families safe, and of course, spending time together. I'll see you again on Wednesday with a new episode of Searchlight right here on the Lord and Arts channel.